Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Swerve with me. This is a show where we have adult conversations for mature audiences only. I'm Miranda Innes. Once again, it's good to have you with me. I'm so very excited about tonight's show. And as you come in, make sure you tag somebody who wants to be in on this conversation tonight. We're talking about what women need to know about men because hey, listen, this show is personal for me because clearly I'm still single, so I must have been getting something wrong. So come on, tag somebody, let them know we're talking to Dr. Adrian and Carter tonight. He's a social scientist, he's a thought leader in leadership development, he's an author, he's an educator. And as we come in tonight, he's going to tell you a little more about himself, what he does, and we're going through a list of things. I've been doing the research, guys, because I need some answers. And so we have a male in the lab tonight who I believe is going to give us some great insight into what we need to know tonight. And so come on and tag somebody, let them know Swerve is back this Sunday night with another round of interesting, thought provoking conversation. You know, we tell the stories of people who've overcome challenges and they're not afraid to show their scars and speak their truth. We'll find out a little bit about Adrian, who he is, what he's done, and what makes him an expert in relationships, as a matter of fact, tonight. And so, though he has all of those accolades under his belt, I want to talk to him tonight in his capacity as a social scientist, someone who has studied society, human nature, our interaction with each other as people. We really want to get down into what we don't understand about each other. And so come on in, everybody, and I want you to help me welcome to Swerve tonight, Adrian Carter. Adrian, it's
Hey
so
there.
good to have you here tonight.
How are you? Thank you for having me on. I'm honored. It's been a long week, but I appreciate us being able to make it to this point. I love your glasses, by the way. So
Thank
way
you.
to rock
Thank
the
you.
glasses with the lipsticks. I see you. I see what you did there.
All right. You see me. That's good stuff. Listen, is we've been trying to make this happen since last year. We've been back and forth. You've been busy,
Mhm.
I've been busy, and so on. But there's no time like the present to get down into this conversation tonight. So, as is customary on the show, I like to start at the beginning and just tell us a little bit about Adrian and Carter. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Adrian Carter. I am, as you mentioned, a social scientist. I'm a leadership development and conflict resolution practitioner expert. I'm finishing up my PhD in conflict resolution. And as a social scientist, it's just like you said, I study human behavior and the phenomenons of human behavior, conduct research to understand what's going on and what that looks like on a daily basis. Is I talk to a lot of people. I'm always talking to people, talking to men, especially. The specificity of my work is I speak on behalf of men because a lot of times I think in the space of speaking about relationships, men are usually quieted, muted. They have a smaller presence because women take up a lot of that space when we talk about emotions and feelings and relationships. And I think there's a lot of ways that men feel that needs to be talked about and brought to the forefront. I run a conference for men every year. This year was the third installment of that conference titled the Empower Men Conference. And I'm also an author of the book, Let's Get Married and Do Everything Except Make It Last, a heart to heart with men on loving and leading. And that book has been doing great. So please go out and get a copy. And I'm happy to be here. I love these conversations. Absolutely love them.
We're looking forward to the conversation. As you're coming in, of course, tag somebody, let them know. We're going to be talking about what we've been missing as women, what we need to know about man. So I've been doing the research, Adrian, and of course, I
Mhm.
came across so many different things that we as women wrestle with. I had some talks with some girlfriends. I had a little non-scientific focus group. And then I did
Mhm.
some additional research, and we were just talking about what is it that we are not getting? What are we missing out on? And so I'm so glad we have a real live specimen in the lab tonight to help us out with this conversation. So I wrote down a number of things that
Okay.
I believe in the course of my research that we are missing about man. And I'm going to throw some out to you, and you can just qualify them and let us know where we at with this. And there are no particular order of precedence. So we're just talking.
Okay.
So you guys who
Okay.
are out there listening, you're actually just in on a conversation because I'm trying to pick Adrian's brain. We're trying to figure out, as single women, what is it? Unmarried women, what are we missing? Because there are a lot of people that we can appreciate that are in relationships, whether married or dating, and they're still not getting it right. They're still not communicating effectively. There's still some missing elements in the relationship. And so we believe that this conversation tonight is definitely going to benefit so many out there. So I want to start with my number one.
Okay.
And it says, I'm looking down because I got my notes. Just because a man is a little quiet doesn't mean there's necessarily something wrong. I know as women, when men are quiet and they're not saying, and the first question is, what's wrong? What's going on? And we always tend to want to lead the conversation and talk about things. So let's explore that. Just because a man is quiet doesn't necessarily mean that something is wrong.
No, it absolutely does not. What comes to mind is that we have a socio-normative view about masculinity. And what I mean by that is there is this idea of an archetype of what a man is supposed to be and look like. And we have a lot of images in our media that reinforces that idea of what alpha male and manhood, masculinity is supposed to look like. And a lot of times women misjudge men when they don't appear to show up in that particular way. Right. That's really where that comes in. You have to, it goes back to no different from how women want a man to take the opportunity to get to know them before they judge them. Right. Men ultimately want the same thing. So, and I'll be able to tie together some things when I get to my list as we go, after we go through your list. But that's what comes to mind. We just have a normal way of thinking about what man is supposed to look like and sound like and appear like, even if it's psychologically for women, a matter of feeling a sense of security and know that she has a man's man. She has to really ask herself, who taught me that is what a man is supposed to look, behave, and think like? And what makes him not a man if he doesn't show up in the context or in this framework that she thinks that he's supposed to show up as?
I want to explore that a little further because when I talk about because he's quiet doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong, meaning that sometimes men have a tendency to shut down. And if they're not saying anything, we don't know what's happening. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we tend to probe more into that. And I think the more we probe, the less he says.
Yeah, because y'all probe too much. Let a brother think. Can I just have a moment to think and process all of this? That's what it really boils down to, right? There's this idea that if he doesn't have an immediate response, then he doesn't care. A lot of times when you're talking about a man and a woman and they're in a romantic relationship and there's something that's going on, at the end of the day, we still carry the notions that the man is ultimately responsible for ensuring security and protection. And while the woman does that as well, a thoughtful man wants to take the opportunity to think things through. Right? Because ultimately they know that they're going to share a great deal of the responsibility in how things play out or be held accountable for how things play out. Of course, this is incident by incident with the specifics, but in general, yeah, brother just wants some time to think. That's all.
You said something that I think kind of made some people's hair stood up, and because as women we're taught that men are supposed to be protectors and providers, etc. And you said something to the extent that just because he is doesn't necessarily mean, or did I misinterpret that?
Yeah, well, no, I wasn't saying I'm saying that he interprets that as having a greater level of accountability right? So, without using a specific situation based on the number one reason why the reason that you just gave, I'm just saying in general, he has to have enough time to process how he's going to move, because he knows that he holds this level of accountability in providing a level of security or direction or leadership in the situation. So very simply put, a lot of times he really does want time to think and process things. And because women want, and I've seen this before, I've even experienced this personally, because she wants an immediate response from me, it actually becomes more irritating, right? Trying to make a man say something while he's processing, right? And a simple solution to that is even ask the question, are you processing? Are you thinking about it? Do you need some time to respond? How much time do you think you'll need? What are you thinking about the situation? And that should be a sufficient answer in a lot of cases. I'm not saying if it's been going on for a whole week or a few days and you've not heard anything that you can't check back in, but to pry at that moment that something's going on while they're processing is not going to be advantageous to the couple.
Which leads me into number 2. The best way to change a man's behavior is not by nagging him, but appealing to his deepest sense of virtue, rather than nagging him, appealing to that good side, whatever that good side is for the man.
Give me an example. I would love to hear how that plays out. You have an example for me?
Okay, so you want to get something done. And it's something that you've been waiting for.
She wants the pictures hung on a particular wall where she wants to set up all the family pictures to cascade down. Okay, all right.
So let's go with that. Yeah. We want this, and we've been talking about this for I want to say it's been weeks. We've been talking about this. So rather than saying I asked you to do this 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, whatever it is, instead of her doing that, try to appeal to his good side about doing something, complimenting him, doing something nice for him, and then kind of warming up to. And when you finish, would you mind hanging the pictures up on the wall or something like that? What do you think about that approach?
That's one approach. I would suggest having the conversation as the approach. Having a direct conversation. Hey, babe, listen, I know I had asked you about putting the pictures up on the wall and you haven't gotten them done yet. I'm not rushing you. I do want to I'm working on a particular timeline. Is there something you need? Is there something that's going on? Do you need more time? Is something else more pressing? So a lot of times what we don't do is give the person the benefit of the doubt. And I think we have to do a better job in order to resolve conflict is explore the alternative story and to give people the benefit of the doubt. And what I mean by that, for example, is if you're running late to get somewhere, it's natural for a person to think like, oh, I'm running late. I hope that they, forgive me. I don't want to, people give themselves more grace. But if you're waiting on somebody else to come and that person is running late, it's pretty normal for people to think, why are they not showing up on time? They're undermining this, they're doing that, they're doing this, as opposed to saying, I hope everything's all right. Let me check on them. I hope, they didn't get in an accident. Like we tend to not give the benefit of the doubt until after the fact. So asking the question, I think that direct approach in a very sensitive way and caring way, I think can be much more productive than trying to lure him into the behavior that you want, as opposed to having a direct conversation.
Okay. Well, so right away, one of the comments, Lavette Farrington says, really, I find that men just like to do things in their own time. So we're going to move on. Let's go to men are visual creatures, true or false?
Yeah. And so are women. I wish we would stop that foolishness. Like women like good looking men the same way men like good looking women. We are visual, right? We definitely are visual. And I think the interesting thing though about men is men do go through these maturation phases where aesthetics is high on their list at one point, and then while it remains important on their list, right, how important it is goes down as they find other attributes in women to be more important or just as important, and that usually happens with men as they go through their maturation process. But yes, looks are important.
So, maturation process for man. It's been said over and over again that women tend to mature faster than men, whether
Mhm.
that's emotionally, physically, whatever. So, that maturation process, any idea of how long that could be before he comes to that place where he understands or recognizes that, yes, aesthetics are important, like you said, for both, but at what stage, is there a time frame, or it's different for everybody when you believe men come to that point of maturation?
Well, is it actually true that women mature faster than men? Right. So
I
I
don't
think
know. It's been
yeah,
said. You're a social
yeah, it's been said.
scientist. I'm just putting
Right.
it out there.
So here's what's interesting, right? Well, I've looked into that. And there's an article that talked about the study that was done that showed those results. But it's interesting to see what the information was in the study that led to that conclusion. For example, women identified things that men did that they felt that was immature behavior and therefore made men less mature than women. For example, men pass gas, at the dinner table or in public. That was one of them. Men drive fast, right? That's another one of the things. And there was a laundry list of other things. Those two stood out for me. I tend to remember those two for whatever reason. So their maturity level is based on him, burping. Oh, burping at the table was another one. Men will burp at the table. So when you begin to actually look at what the study says as a reference point for what makes women more mature than men, I scoff at that. That's, to me, that was like, that's what y'all talking about?
Yeah.
Because in fact,
kind of trivializes it for me, based
right,
on that.
exactly. I like that word a lot. That's exactly what it is. It wasn't rooted in any deep
Anything
matters of
substantial.
emotional,
Yeah.
right, of matters of emotional intelligence, matters of money management, matters of parenting, conflict resolution. It was these trivial things that are extremely subjective. So, but what I do think, though, in terms of men's maturation process, is I definitely think some men do mature later than women, but I think men are more honest about their maturation process than women are. See, so there's a biological side to this, though. Women, there's a biological and a sociological side to this. Biologically, women tend to want to have a child between that nice age range of anywhere from 24 to 34, 35, right? And because they talk about their clocks, their clocks are ticking. But men, and I've talked to men, when you talk to men, and I've been on Clubhouse and we're asking these questions, right? Getting this data from them. When do you feel that you are most comfortable and settled in who you are as a mature person and you want to take on the role and responsibility of family, da 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 da? They say 35 years old. That's been a consistent number we've heard, mid-30s.
So they say mid-30s, but they don't, what I want to say, I mean, because they haven't unprotected sex and they haven't children.
Right. They want sex. Right. They want sex. Now, the responsibility of family, it doesn't mean that they don't accept it earlier. it's the question is, what is their most desired age to engage in that? 35.
So
But for women,
yeah.
But for women, it's 25. Let's say, right, in this. So there's this 10-year gap. So what you tend to have are women who are more interested in having a committed relationship. And this is where I think women think that they're more mature than men. Women think they're more mature than men because women are more interested in being committed. It's that word, committed. Women are more interested in being in a committed relationship, while I think men are more honest about not wanting to be in one.
Well, I don't know necessarily if it's that men are more honest, because I believe that if that conversation is had, I mean, quite frankly, 24 is still not mature enough in my mind. But at 24,
clock is ticking.
Yeah, 24-year-old, they're not having those types of conversations.
Right.
When it comes to
see, the brain matures.
I don't know if it's a matter of honesty, though. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that at that age, in any event, they're having those types of conversations.
Well, what I mean by honesty is that men are more honest in their behavior about not wanting to be in a serious monogamous relationship, while on the other hand, women are dealing with their clock ticking. So they are looking more so to be in a committed relationship so that they can prep themselves for childbearing. Because again, we're looking at the age difference, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. She wants to be able to have children in that age range, while men are saying, I want to take on family at the age of 35. But
what I'm saying is, but they're not having that conversation.
Oh, no, they're not. I mean, you're right. They're not having the conversation, because
that's what I'm talking about.
They know to have the conversation, right? I don't even think they know. So I would agree with that. But the point that I do want to highlight, though, when you talked about men being more mature, women being more mature, I think women think they're more mature because they're more interested in being committed in a relationship. And I think where the failure occurs in relationships is on the women. Men have their own pot of what helps to undermine relationships. But in terms of the word commitment and looking at women, I think what women have done is they've mistaken their desire for commitment, or their commitment to being committed. They've mistaken that to mean maturity and readiness. And that's not the same thing. Commitment does not equal readiness.
Yeah. I understand. Women, we're nurtured. We're nurtured that way to want to come into a commitment. I mean, just look back at our ancestry. They married young. I mean, whether they wanted to or not is another issue, but they married young and started having children like right away. You know, no matter what age it is. But let's move on, because we could stay there for a while.
By the way, how come you know all my family folks from the Bahamas? I see you know that, right? All my family folks, your Facebook friends, by the way.
Oh, okay. I don't know who they are, but we could talk about that.
I just wanted to point that out. I saw a lot of my family folks respond to the post when you put the flyer up. So I thought that was interesting.
Okay. I know one in particular said that's my cousin, but I think that was Eleanor Williams, but I'm not sure who the others would be.
Eleanor is my aunt, actually. She's my aunt.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So men need to know that they are needed. Men need to know that they're needed. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I have written down on my list is men want security. Now, again, in this, what we've done with traits of masculinity and femininity and matters of the heart, things that are emotionally driven, is we've categorized things to be women-based and men-based. And one of the things that we've categorized as being a women's desire is security. It's a women's thing. Women want security. That's one of their highest values when it comes to relationships. So we tend to not talk about men wanting security when we talk about relationships. But
that's actually on Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Say that again.
as actually on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Everybody needs to feel safe,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Uh-huh.
and I think, and so I make a connection when you talk about needs to feel needed. Um, not in a very um not in a very rote way of, well, let me give him something to do so he could feel needed, but feeling needed in the sense of also feeling secure, right? Feeling that they are appreciated, feeling that they're in a safe space, and in that appreciated safe space also feel that they belong there, which means they also feel needed in that space. They feel welcome there. Men want those same social emotional there's the same social emotional things that women want in that particular way. It's just that we don't talk about it. When we talk about men, we mostly have that conversation about women. So
Mhm.
absolutely, men need to feel needed and secure.
Okay, so if you're just joining us, good night. I'm talking to soon to be Dr. Adrian Carter. He is a social scientist among so many others, and we're talking about what women need to know about men. Okay, if you treat men like children, they will happily oblige. They'll act that way. What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting. If you treat men like children, they'll happily oblige.
They'll do it. They'll act that way. If you
Have
and
you
in my mind, that means if you're dictating to them and telling them what to do all the time, whatever, then they won't do much without you telling them to do it.
have you experienced that?
No, not personally. I haven't.
Yeah, whoever gave you that feedback, I would love to hear like what brought them to that conclusion. I've not necessarily heard that before. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that to me borders on the conversation of alpha men versus beta males, and that conversation is what masculinity again is supposed to look like in these categories that we've created, which I think are are not necessarily helpful,
Okay.
again, because we like to genderfy ideas
Mm-hmm.
and these concepts. And I think when we box that in, we rarely make room for us to understand how things actually can be a lot more fluid between men and women. So I don't know. I'm not sure about that one.
Okay.
I don't.
Um,
I tell you this much: if we were to contextualize it in terms of alpha men and beta men, I know alpha men ain't going for that. So
yeah, we know that. Okay, so how about this one? If you have high expectations for your relationship with him, don't set the bar too low. If you have high expectations and you're compromising too much, like don't set the bar too low. If your expectations are that you want your relationship to be an 8, or let's say a 10, let's go for a 10. You have these expectations that your relationship should be a 10. Don't set the bar lower or just settle for a 5. What do you think about that?
yeah, I mean, those numbers sound well, right? What I like to do is I talk about standards, expectations, and entitlements. And if you look at the first three letters, it's SEE. So I talk about how we see relationships with standards, expectations, and entitlements. I think we misdefine standards, right? I define standards as there is a standard human factor, human respectability that I think is supposed to happen between people. And so when people say, well, I have these these high standards, and men are saying that you got to lower your standards and da 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 da. I think we mislabel that, because that looks so different for you as a woman than what it may look like as another woman. And of course, a lot of the conversations is often centered around money. Or, I haven't. My standard is I have to live this type of a lifestyle, and the man needs to bring this to the table. And I don't know, right? When we really, my definition of that of standards is just how we demonstrate respect to each other as human beings. And what I mean by that is, how do you greet me? How do you speak to me? What's your tone of voice? Um, are how do you make me feel comfortable around you? You know, are you nice to me? Right? You know, are you respectful? Just normal human things, right?
Yeah.
That we know doesn't happen. That, you know, unfortunately, in a lot of relationships, sometimes just doesn't happen. Then I think we have expectations, and those expectations, they evolve, they change, we negotiate them, right? And I think that's where I really hear the question placed, is really about expectations. I have these expectations for my relationships, for my relationship, and I don't want it to fall below what this is. And I think that becomes a conversation. Men have expectations too, right? And women have expectations. But if those expectations are not clearly stated and established, then it's going to be very hard, right, to necessarily meet them. What I think people definitely should do, though, is if you have a standard of respect and you feel disrespected, and there are behaviors that don't meet your standard in that respectability factor, then you definitely should be considering being in another relationship, because if the person is not willing to meet you at that basic human level, then I think you have a serious problem. You're not going to be able to ever get to those expectations.
I think if the expectations too, before you go on to entitlements, are based on your shared core values. Your
Right.
shared core values, rather than the expectation being on, I expect him to make a certain salary and to drive this and to wear that. If you have shared core values, then the expectation is, if you're not meeting up to my standard, going back to the S of core values, and this is something that should be discussed, then yeah, if I that's an issue. That's an issue, because we're not
Right.
sharing, the similar values to build the relationship upon.
Right. And you know, and entitlement becomes, there's a very thin line between expectation and entitlements. I think most people don't understand that they're operating out of an entitlement until they're met with the expectation, until the expectation is not met.
So let's go. Yeah, qualify that, because I'm kind of a bit of confused.
Right. So
Let's talk about that entitlement. Yeah.
yeah. So you know, when a person is entitled to something, they believe that they have a right to it, right? Almost like a birthright. Because I am this person, I am supposed to have this, right? So the supposed to, and so it's a very definitive matter. You know, let's say, Randa, for example, that you believe that a man is supposed to pull out your chair every time you go to have a seat, and and um and let's say you say, well, I expect, right? It starts off, well, I expect him to always pull out my chair. And so then let's say he doesn't do it on a couple of occasions. And then it becomes a point of conflict, becomes a conversation, and then a point of conflict. The fact that there's no flexibility in this, he's supposed to do this, versus I like when the guy I'm dating, right? If she says, I like when the guy I'm dating pulls out my chair, I think that's a nice gesture. And if he does it most of the time, that's cool. But the moment that it's not happening and it becomes, no, that's a problem, you actually don't have an expectation, you have an entitlement, right? So again, people can't always see, people don't always know the difference between the two until they're met, until they're confronted with it not being met.
Right. Entitlement, expectation. Okay. Yeah. And I think, again, that goes to the way, I guess, environment, and the without having that discussion initially with that person, because he may necessarily come from a background where chivalry wasn't readily demonstrated or talked about, or he's not even familiar with that, or wasn't even knowledgeable that that was an expectation or an entitlement that you believe you had, if you never had that conversation with him. So
Absolutely.
that's a whole other level. Okay, so let's see. Men tend to understate their feelings, while women tend to overstate theirs. What do you think?
I do think that's true. I think that's very
Think
true.
about that.
Yeah, I think what happens is um, men are told that um, their emoting is makes them less than a man, right? Being emotional is a female trait, is what we would, is what people would say. They've heard it in songs, they rap, yeah, that's a female trait. So part of the identity of manhood and masculinity is his ability to be stoic, his ability to show less emotion than more. And I think that has not served our men well, especially our black men. I think that our men experience a lot of trauma, and they've not been taught proper coping skills of how to express themselves and how to balance and be a balanced person. I
Mhm.
think on the other side, because we view being emotional as feminine, I do think women, as I've said on other platforms, I think women can be emotionally reckless. It's like they know that they're allowed to get in this car, and they're allowed to this emotional car, and they could drive up and down and hit anything they want and swerve into any lane and run into any building in any department store, and they could just wreck out on their emotions because they're a woman. And then they get to come out of the car, and it's almost like there's no consequences, there's no accountability because she's a woman. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think we have two very divergent perspectives on how we view women being allowed to emote and men not being allowed to be as emotional as women, or as emotional, period.
I kind of, when it comes to public display of emotions from men or women, when it comes to men are emotional too. It's expressed differently. Most of the time, it's expressed in anger,
Right.
and so I tend not to buy into women are more emotional than men. Women just have a way of emoting. You see it, you know it, and most women are quote unquote emotional because they're trying to get that attention. It's like, if I
Right.
swerve the car,
Right. Yeah. The more
if I
we are is the
swerve
more
the car
attention they
in
get.
and out of the traffic, if I scream, if I shout, if I nag, if I burn the clothes and bleach the this and all
Right.
those kinds of things, they are cries for attention.
Right.
That doesn't mean that the man is not emotional.
Right. Well, I, you make a good point, right? In the expression of emotions, right? So let's draw the distinction. In the expression of emotion, I think you find men being, as I mentioned, less expressive and
Mm-hmm.
women more expressive. But in the sheer matter of being emotional, I agree with you. You're 100% correct. Men are just as emotional as women are, and how they show up in the presentation of it. And this is where bad coping skills have ultimately been, men have been socialized into poor coping skills with in how to express their emotions. Because they're told to muster it so much, emotions operate just like any energy. It's still there, right? You can't make it go away. So what has happened is those men have just simply transformed.
I can see it because I don't know what's happening. Can
I
you
can
still
see you.
hear us? Okay.
I can see you, and I can
I
still
don't
hear.
know what just happened. Okay, go ahead.
So men have gone into emotional states. I mean, think about this. Most wars were started by emotional men. It a lot of emotions always being shared. So absolutely, men, they become angry. There's hyper masculinity, and they go to other extremes because they've been bottled up with those emotions for so long. That energy has to come out one way or the other. In fact, it's better if it comes out in tears. That's what is very interesting about crying. Crying can be very cathartic, right? It releases a lot of those negative emotions, and allows your body to release that stress and that tension. So men cry. I ain't say do it publicly. I'm not saying go cry on social media. You don't got to pull a tank, but it's definitely, you should be releasing those emotions. It seems to me that Miranda is having some technical difficulties. Until she comes back again, I'm just happy for the opportunity to be here and to be a part of her platform. I never take any of this for light, having the opportunity to sit and talk with different people from all over the world. I've had the opportunity to talk to folks in Africa, podcast and webcam stuff happening in Canada, and even here in all over the state, and even in the Bahamas. So I see that you're back. I was just holding it down for a moment.
Awesomeness. I'm actually in Dallas, so I don't even know what's happening. But in any event, so are men as this isn't a statement, this is a question. Are men equally as romantic as women? And we're not talking about specific men, but just generally.
I don't think I could answer that one. I mean, I don't know. That is such a subjective sliding scale. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's hard to, it's hard to pin that one down. Okay,
I'll let you slide.
I might write her a poem, and you never know. I might dance for her. So you never know. You know what I mean? So you get different things from different men.
The poem might be like your greatest gesture ever for her. Like, and if she sees that poem, it's like, that's romance.
Yeah.
Okay.
It shows up in so many different ways, and you'll be surprised too. A lot of women don't want to be romanced. It kind of goes back to those. And when I say romance, it doesn't mean that she never wants to have a romantic moment. It's not what I'm saying. Some people are like, hey, I just want to spend quality time with you. I want to just sit on this couch and cuddle up.
That's romance.
Yeah.
Because
that's what I'm saying. If that's being romantic, then plenty of people do that.
Yeah, that's not, and romance is not just take me to dinner and bring me flowers and buy me gifts. And again, that speaks to whatever your love language is, because for some women, just sitting up on the couch, watching a movie, cuddling, that's romance. That's all they need.
Right. And that's why I say it's the sliding scale on that is so vast. But then you do have some women who are like, that's not romantic. Right.
Exactly.
So let me be clear. You have women who would be like, no, like when you take me out and you bring me flowers and I get to dress up, and the people come over and they play the violin and sing me a song, like that's being romantic. So they could cuddle all day long and she could be like, he's not romancing me.
Yeah, because that's not a love language. She wants some gifts. That's acts of service and all those kinds of things. Okay, so let's think about this. Okay, so someone said to me, men care less about looks than you think, meaning attractiveness of a woman. They care less than we think.
Well, that goes back to what I also said, that right. I think there was a point in time where looks is heavy on the desire of men, and then as he develops and gets more mature, while looks remain on the list, right? It becomes less important, right? But it's still on the list, so it's important. So I mean, I agree. Over a period of time, as he matures, he realizes that there are more important qualities and assets that she needs to bring to the table, that works for him.
Okay. Is the way to a man's heart really through his stomach?
It helps. It helps.
It helps.
Knowing is half the battle. I think his stomach is half the battle. Let me tell you what I think is the way to a man's heart, right? You gotta, there is no silver bullet here. That's number one. Okay. If you've ever played golf before, any sport, but golf in particular, you got this little ball, you got this tee, and you got this big old club, and you have to stand a certain way. Your shoulders have to be positioned, right? You have to have a certain grip on the club. You have to bring the club back. You have to follow through. So you have your back swing, and then your front swing, and how you follow through. There's a lot of mechanic that happens in order for you to hit a good shot, right? A lot of mechanics. But you do need to have a good club. You do need to have a good ball, and you need to have the right equipment. So it's not just this one thing. It's not just the club or just the ball or or just the outfit. It takes a group of things to really work together. But some of those things that are important, though, is it sounds so trivial and simple, but women, you have to bring a level of peace to his life. And that goes back to the security and the safe space that I talked about before, right? It's so if you're able to speak to his stomach, right, and then also be a safe space that he can come to and work and be around and feel comfortable in, right? Those two things go a long way. Those two things go a long way. Now, I know that there are women who have been that type of a woman, or been that type of a woman to a man who didn't appreciate her. I totally get that. I totally get that, ladies. But when somebody doesn't appreciate what you've done, it doesn't mean that what you've done was the wrong way to go about doing something, right? Because again, there are a lot of components. The right time, was that the person actually for you? So think about that. Sometimes you could give that safe space and that good home cooked meal and that companionship to someone, but if that was never the person for you, right? You can never be the right person for the wrong person, no matter what you do. Right. So think about that sometimes, that plays into it. I don't want people to think that if I do these things, then the man will be with me. Like, that's not the end result. That's not how that works. But it doesn't change the way that the math formula is calculated. Just because you plug the wrong numbers in doesn't make the formula wrong.
Got it. Okay. So what about this? Men tend to, no, sorry. Men learn masculinity from their father. But if he's missing, then they're missing a major element of their life.
Yes and no. I mean, certainly fatherhood plays a major role in that. I think men learn, as women learn also, masculinity from a plethora of sources. They're learning it from their friends. They're learning it from music. They're learning it from how they see family members, uncles, other men around them. They're learning it from pastors and things like that. I think the relevance, though, of fatherhood is not just a matter of him learning how to be a man. It's him having something to identify with. And I think that's the bigger correlation, like the bigger connecting part. When a man has his father, there is an identity recognition that happens, right? There's a biological identity that is happening. That's my father. I came from him. There's a connection there. There's a security connection that is also happening, right? Because there's a safety in knowing that your father is there. So I don't think it's just that they learn to be a man, because a lot of times you'll have men, young boys, who are more mentored by their football coach or their sport coach than or their what?
Gang.
Or gangs, right? But even in having the father around, right, doesn't necessarily mean that they were learning manhood from them. They could have watched the character on TV and emulate a lot of the things that they do in terms of their style and personality that they may have been attracted to. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's why I say there's really an ecosystem of things that are teaching them how to be a man. But what's most important for everybody, though, is our identity. and not being able to see yourself reflected in the person that brought you here, that had played half of the role in bringing you here, is damaging to the spirit. And I think that's what hurts men. Not learning how to be a man is not what hurts them when it comes to the issue of fatherhood entirely.
Okay. The worst thing you can do is put a man down.
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst thing you do is put anybody down. I mean, I think there's a difference between constructive criticism and being critical, and and a lot of that is going to be based on the relationship that you have with the person. And then people are dealing with different traumas and have had different experiences and are fighting different battles, silently on top of that. So I see that as across the board. I think the best way to help resolve that, though, is to develop a relationship with the person and ask questions more so than make statements.
Demonstrate that. Give us a demonstration of what that would look like.
Demonstration. So if he's doing something, and let me think of an example. If you don't think he's being, if he's effectively practicing time management, you may, instead of saying, hey, I can't go nowhere with you. You always late. You make me look bad. Who raised you? You never take anything serious, right? Those things are being very critical. So those are statements. Asking the questions would look like, hey, have you ever considered how you manage your time? Right? Ask the question. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, sometimes I notice that when things start at a particular time, usually show up after. So I'm just wondering, have you ever thought about how you manage your time? No, I ain't never think about it. Or yeah, I think about it, but it's not that big of a deal to me. Have you ever had something that was important that was going on that you wish you had gotten the time? You wish you had made it on time, or you missed, or yeah, da 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 da, may have, may not have. Well, so even if they say no, let's say they say no, I've never missed something that was important to me because of time. After asking that question, and working through a series of questions, then it can lead you to say, well, hey, time's very important to me, and I've missed some important things in my life because I wasn't there on time, and I that's something that I've always held dear to myself, to make sure that I want to be to a certain place on time. How can you help me do that? Right? Again, asking the question instead of being critical.
You sound like a therapist. That type of, you sound like a therapist. That type of conversation isn't really going on in the average relationships. And based on what you're saying, I mean, I guess it is a learned behavior. It could become a learned behavior for some people, because if this man is non-communicative, and it sounds like you're saying ask more questions, and in this particular instance that we're talking about, rather than make statements. But if he's a non-communicative person in the first place, and you're coming at him with all these different questions, that is sensitive territory to tread upon as well.
Yeah, I definitely say you do have to know your person, right? Let me back up and say this. People say that the key to relationships is communication, and I don't think it is. I don't think the key to relationships is communication. My father used to joke and say, people think the key is communicating. The problem is people talk too much. And, it stuck with me. And I think he's right. I think my father's right. The problem is not communication, is that people don't know how to communicate. Most people are ineffective communicators. Right. Most people think because they talk a lot and they're communicating that they're being effective, but they're not. Right. They're agitating, they're probing, they're chastising, they're doing a lot of those things. instead of asking questions and building relationships, right? So that's where it is, right? Your success is in building a relationship. So you ask the question to build the relationship. You,
Sure.
of course, there are going to be some more comments that you could put in there, even if he's like, "Hey, why you keep asking me all these questions?" And you could say, "Hey, because there's you tend to be late to things, and I don't like being late, but I want to see if we could work something out. I want to understand how you feel about it, so that maybe we could figure this out together." See, that's a much different conversation than
Sure.
you late and you make me look bad and just don't drive with me no more. I'll drive my car, right? You see, so I understand it sounds more therapeutic, but I do think people need to learn, in watching your platform, need to be able to hear these type of examples to say, okay, well, let me try something different because it may get me a different result.
Sure. Sure. Learned behavior for sure. Okay. Men think that one of a woman's most attractive quality is her confidence.
Yeah, I mean, confidence is always attractive, right? We all date at our confidence level. So think about that, right? The more so of course, yeah, you like you know, it's going to vary for some men, but a lot of men do like a confident woman, a woman who's sure and certain about herself, the same way that women like confident men and men who are certain about themselves. It adds to that security factor. But then listen, on both sides of the spectrum, you have women and men who would be intimidated of each other when they see that type of personality. And one person's confidence to the other person may look like arrogance, so that's one of those slide and scale questions again. But in general, yeah, I definitely think people like confidence.
Okay, women need to watch their tone with men.
You're doggone right they do. And then let me get all emphatic about that. Oh my God. One of the greatest assets that a woman has is her femininity. And her femininity is most effective right through her tone. Okay, bear with me. I'm gonna share something with you, right? It's gonna be a little technical, right? And I've not shared this yet because I'm gonna put this in my coaching program. All right. So,
hey, you heard it here first.
Right. So this is very, very good information. Okay. So the difference in a lot of the differences in femininity and masculinity is based on tone. When we talk about audio, sound, music, okay, men tend to have deeper voices. Women tend to have higher pitch voices. Okay. Now, when we say turn up the volume on something, turn up the loudness on it. When you talk about the hearing, the human being natural hearing, scientifically, low sounding tone, such as a man's voice, has to be louder in order for you to hear it. And higher pitch sounds, such as a woman, has to be lower, okay, in order for them to be at the same loudness. You follow me so far? So the loudness level of a man's voice, if it is here, a woman's equally loud voice has to be here. That is an audio scientific matter, which means
it's the mix. You're mixing the audio.
Right.
One has to be higher than the next. It's
right.
I could think of
in order for the volume or the loudness to be the same. That's what's key here. Okay. So this is what happens when a woman begins to speak as loud as a man. She's actually speaking louder than him in his perception of hearing. The human ear hears higher frequency sounds louder than they do lower frequency sounds. So a woman who's speaking at a level 10, at a man's level 10, is actually speaking at a level 20, because on the scale, there is a 10 decibel difference between a woman's natural speaking voice and a man's natural speaking voice. She speaks at the same loudness, but 10 levels lower in order to be equal to his voice. So my point here is her tone is one of her biggest strengths. So when she decides to start speaking as loud as he is, she's actually speaking louder than him.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to disarm a man is in the femininity of your tone, by maintaining a voice that is at his level. This is at his level. Because the moment you decide I'm going to speak as loud as him, you're actually speaking louder, and it becomes more antagonistic. So you want to talk about the ways to a man's heart is through his stomach. It might be the way to a man's heart is through her voice.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I completely and totally get it. And I love the way it sounds. Okay. I want to turn to tables now. And begin to hear from you, because I know you made some notes about some things that you think women need to know about men that perhaps we may not have covered in this. So talk about it.
You know, we just finished talking about the differences between femininity and masculinity in terms of the tone. And that's one of the things I had there, because I want to reemphasize that women have great power in their femininity. But what's happened is we're living in a very convoluted world where feminine and masculine has all been jumbled up. Employment, work, going into the workforce is a very male dominated thing. It's a very male driven idea of what leadership looks like. For example, when we even say leadership is a masculine trait, and being a follower is a feminine trait. And I think the fact that we even have the category of masculine and feminine is a disservice to us, because again, we like to genderify things. You know, this word belongs to women, security, this leadership belongs to men. But in fact, women lead and men want security, right? But because we've put them in these categories, we've truncated off how the conversation is really being. We've truncated having a holistic instead of having a holistic conversation. So I definitely want to encourage women to know that men want your femininity. They want your softness. They want your gentleness. They want you to be a place that they can come to and feel comfortable in that way. A lot of times, secondly, a lot of times they refer to the scripture. Men are supposed to love their wife and women are supposed to respect their husbands. And again, we have a truncated conversation. We have a very boxed in, genderfied conversation, meaning we tend to talk about women wanting love as the conversation and men needing to be respected as the only conversation. Men want to be loved too. Facts, right? And guess what? Women want to be respected. See, that's the holistic, that's the other side of the conversation that we're really missing. Which is why we have conflict. We're not having well-rounded conversations. We're having these truncated conversations. How a woman shows up and respects and loves her man is going to look different. We know that's why we have the whole thing about love languages that we've all, adapted to so very well, because it makes sense. But likewise, women want to be respected, right? But respect is not even a wife and husband thing. It is a human thing, right? Mm-hmm. So if you don't even feel respected in your relationship, I mean, plenty of women be like, I felt he disrespected me. So people want respect. Right. So that's number two.
Can I just interject something? I think I call it LRS, love, respect, and support. Both people want to be supported as well. If a man is doing something, he wants that support from his wife or somebody he's dating, and likewise the woman, absolutely, if she's doing something. So I think it's that combination of love, respect, and support that all of us desire as human beings.
It sounds like a music group, LRS.
Yeah, LRS. That's what I call it. Love, respect, and support.
Yeah, next to the stage is LRS. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I love it. I really do. And I think you're absolutely right. That support part of it. And what I want to highlight in that is that both men and women want it. right?
Yeah,
Like that's the thing to keep in mind. Like
that's it.
it's not genderfied as to be for women only and men only. And that again, it becomes a very incomplete conversation. Lastly, my last on my list is money does not make the man. Character does. And a lot of, and I hear this from men all the time, all the time, is that they do feel like a paycheck. They feel as if their role and their identity as a man is wrapped around their income.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this tendency amongst women based on the man's income to make him feel as if he's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Something about him is less than a man because he doesn't make a particular salary that allows him to fund the life or the lifestyle that she may want. Money does not make the man, character does. I don't think there's anything wrong with having or wanting someone who is well-to-do, or someone who is gainfully employed. But I think when men are measured by their wallet, and there could be a host of reasons as to why they're at the income they're in. And statistically, especially when we talk about black men, statistically, right, that with the median salary, I don't know if it's median or average, but is around $42,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? Black women median salary is around $38,000. Okay, and then when you de-aggregate or you segregate that number and you start looking at who's making in the 80, 90, $70,000 range, that's where I believe, right? I've been trying to pull this data through the Census Bureau. I can't locate it, right? But I've been able to get the first part of the data. But I suspect when we talk about black women who are earning more than black men, because a lot of black women are, I think you're going to find that in the 80, 70, 80, $90,000 range, where
Mm,
those women
okay.
are out earning men. But when you look at the average man in all of America only makes $50,000, right? So, and if the black man is 42,000 and the black woman is 38, and then that you still have those people who are making 70, 80, and 90, and then if those are mostly black women, then you're dealing with a very disparate economic situation for black people. Right? We're only 13% of the population. Black men are only 6% of the population. So it's very hard in the times that we live in for black men to make more than a lot of what they are making. Right? More
Well,
people are saturated with higher education degrees, and the job market is much tighter to get
I
into.
want to take the conversation back though to rather than women putting the pressure on men to make more money, or some women desire and they want them in
Mhm.
that higher income bracket, are men putting the pressure on themselves? Because I think it was on my list, the fact that men don't feel, for lack of a better way, whole, complete, unless they are earning, unless they are out there working. I can think
Right.
of an incident where I've had a conversation with friends, a friend who was dating someone who literally said to him, "Listen, I know you're not making what you want to now, but if we combined our income, if we combined them, we can make some things happen until you get to a place of financial independence," whatever that means for him.
Mhm.
He did not buy into that because he thought that he should be the one taking the lead and earning, a higher income. So do some men put the pressure on themselves to do it
Absolutely.
more than women?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so what happens here, and this is really a conundrum, is um, men know that they run the risk of being emasculated. So even when a woman tells her or tells him that, hey, I got you, right? Still take a listen to what she said. I know that you're not earning what you could or what you want. So which one was it that he could make? Right. So let's break this down. I know that you're not making what you could make. So what that tells me is she still has an expectation of what he's supposed to be making.
No, in the discussion that they had, the expectation or it came from him that he thought he wasn't making or doing what he wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
in this particular scenario that I'm painting. Not that she thought he could be doing more. And mind you, she may have thought he could be doing more, but again, it's
Right. Okay.
based on
But he's the one
that
who
they would have
initiated
had.
this conversation. Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get it. Well, in that case, then he still has to okay, he still has to be willing to be in a situation where he doesn't feel that he can might be emasculated, because I think that's what happens sometimes. Is not I know is that men are afraid that even in a woman's best attempts or willingness to work with him in that space, that he can easily still be emasculated. Now, she may not do it, but I think for men, the security that they want is in knowing that they have their money right, that they are going to be settled in their masculinity, in their manhood. So yes, we got to still remember too, society has pushed this pressure and this idea on men that your money makes your manhood, right? The amount of women you're able to attract in your sexual conquest and the amount of money that you have in your pocket defines your masculinity and your manhood. So men still have to unwork that, right? And then you have women who still apply that pressure to them. So yes, men are experiencing the pressure on themselves, and they're also experiencing the pressure from women who have also bought into that mentality as well. And that's not all women, but for the women who have bought into that mentality.
Mm-hmm. So for the woman needs to know a man in that particular headspace, even though she's saying, I got you. What should she be doing? I mean, because she said it, but obviously he doesn't believe it. So what should she be doing in the meantime?
Well, or maybe he don't want to be with her. That could be a part of it too.
Maybe that. So he doesn't want to be with her, but he wouldn't just say, I don't want to be with you.
No, you
how does she know?
Because he gets to not be with her by using the money to reroute the conversation without him having to tell her directly.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get some answers for some people out there. So if this is a pattern, like every time this conversation comes up and it's the same thing, then you kind of like get a hint. That's something to think about. Maybe he just doesn't want to be with you.
Right. Right. If that was someone that he was really attracted to, so two things can be occurring at once. Multiple things can happen. Yes, it is the case that because of how men have been socialized and the pressures that have been put on them by other men and by women, he can have an idea that he has tied his money to his manhood, okay, to his masculinity.
Do most men do that? Do most men do that?
Yes. Okay. Most men do that, and men have to undo that. And I think that's one of the hardest work, right? So let's go back to the less mature man. Looks is high on the totem pole for him when it comes to the woman, and then he has the money to be able to finance the relationship, right? Only for them to learn in the long run that her looks does not override the more intrinsic qualities that he really prefers, and that money cannot fund the intrinsic qualities that he really wants, right? You can't buy someone being nice. Because when the money goes, right, then so does the relationship in a lot of ways, right? So that's one. And then two, while he may still have that mentality, right, if this is someone that he is really interested in, he may even if he's a little suspicious of, like, is she being serious? Because I like you for real, like I really want to get with you, like, so don't toy with my emotions about, because you know how I feel about my money. If a woman who I'm interested tells me that and is understanding of my money situation, then why would I not get with her?
Mm-hmm.
So while he may still have that idea about his money and his masculinity and his manhood, he's if a man is dealing with a woman that he's interested, he's definitely make that exception. He'll more than likely make that exception, I'll say. So maybe he just don't like it like that.
Okay, I hear you. So let's talk about your book, your latest book. Let's talk about that and how did you come about? Because the title I found
Yes.
extremely interesting.
You
So
right here.
yeah, let's talk about that.
I was in a marriage for 9 years, and I learned a lot of lessons from it. I got divorced, and I'm a father of 3 kids, and I learned, like I said at the top of your program, that the male's voice is basically drowned out in the space of emotions. I was told basically as a man, I should be able to lose everything, start over again, and not cry about it, because that's what, men should be able to just do that. And I found a space that was very unwelcoming to the idea that I was hurt as a man. I was basically told that things were my fault. And so this idea that because I'm the man, that I hold the accountability, and that was bewildering to me. And I'm like, how am I the most accountable person in this space when I'm dealing with a whole nother adult, right? Who's fully capable of making decisions, who's fully being who they are. But yet somehow I'm being held more accountable. And I found that to be overwhelming. And then as I was moving along my process, and got to speaking to other men, I found out there are a lot of men out here with stories who feel that as a man, they're not allowed to share their story. They're going to be looked down as less than a man, and who have adopted the belief that, well, I just got to take it and move on. You'll find that a lot of men live in silent, domestically violent situations and emotionally abusive situations, and they are expected to just take it. Even the whole concept at base, when you look at it, that no matter what, when we say no matter what, a man should never hit a woman, even at the base of the fact that a woman is allowed to disperse abuse onto a man, and in order to maintain his masculinity, his only response is to do anything but hit her back, is psychological abuse within in and of itself, right? Because if we were to,
Doesn't he have the same rights to do what she would do in that situation, which is to call the police or do whatever? But is it his masculinity that's standing in the way of him making that call?
Absolutely, 100% is definitely standing in the way, because he doesn't believe, the man is not allowed to be the victim. But that still goes back to the root of the problem, is the men are not allowed to be victims, right? So the idea of even,
but in their own minds,
I wouldn't say it's not necessarily,
or in your minds, I should say, there, but
right.
Minds,
No, I understand that, but we didn't think of this on our own. We live in a social world, right, where information gets passed on, and we're taught. Remember when we had the conversation about being taught? Like, we're in an ecosystem of so many things that are teaching us what and how a man is supposed to be. So we've been taught that one way or the other. So it still remains that men are living in abusive situations and may not even know it, right? And because of how we're socialized, perpetuate, and this goes into what you're saying now, perpetuate their own abuse in order to maintain their identity of what masculinity or manhood is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
Right.
Their view of what it is. Yeah.
So, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to break that mold. I wanted to crack that glass ceiling for men and to begin to have a very deep emotional conversation about what I went through and how I felt as a man, right? Because I don't think, again, it's not a welcome conversation, but I thought that I was going to be kicked out the door and shunned and told, don't come back here. How dare you say these things about women, and how dare you share these type of feelings? But it's been the very opposite. People have loved the book. They've been extremely welcome into what it shares. They are I thought women were going to be mad at me, but actually, no, they've been extremely congratulatory, very thankful that I shared and that I was so transparent and open. And I've heard so many women say to me, I never knew men thought like this. I never knew you all even felt that kind of a way. And that was the purpose of this book. And so I use my personal story just as a foundation to the book, but the book delves into more of a social construct conversation about how did we arrive to the way that we think, right? And so I look at the Bible, I look at society at large, and I do start with religion because I believe religion is where we learn our morals from, and that undergirds everything up. Even the idea of here in America, women being the president or being in high levels of leadership is something that we've had to grow into, because biblically, as a Christian nation, it says that women are not supposed to lead men, right? So from the bottom of this religious construct, we've built organizations, corporations, government, and legislation. And so I deconstruct a lot of those thought processes, and I think the book gives some great advice on some solutions that we can work toward as you get to the end of the book. So I love it. People have loved it. I'm very happy about it. Let's get married and do everything except make it last. And the title is really a play on words, right? And if you look at the title, it's in bold. So there's let's get married and do everything except make it last. And then there's get married and make it last. And so I'm showing that you really have an option, right, in how you go about this. So yeah, and I named it that because it's like I say in the book, two young people got married, and it's as if we got married and decided, hey, you want to get married and do everything except make it last? It's like that's what we said to ourselves, right? Figuratively speaking. And so here we are. It's a great lesson.
Based on your experience going through the marriage, the ultimate subsequent divorce, what's your biggest takeaway, like for you, Adrian, like from the entire experience? What's your greatest takeaway?
My greatest takeaway has been be true to my character and don't let anyone pull me out of my character. Be who I really am. And I mean that in all the ways that are positive, right? I dealt with a lot of self-doubt, a lot of insecurity issues for quite some time. I was in a very verbally and emotionally abusive space for a long time. And I've learned be who I really am, right? And don't be afraid to be who I really am. And if I'm love, show up as love. So a person can kick and scream and can do what they want. I'm gonna be me, I'm going to be the character-filled person I was groomed and raised to be. And so that's been one of the takeaways, one of the biggest takeaways for me.
Can you do that if you don't even know who you are?
Great question. Oh, I mean, that's a beautiful question. You can do some parts of it, right? If you don't know who you are.
Because I think that's what a lot of people would be struggling with. Like, I'm just trying to find myself, and particularly if they've been through a traumatic relationship. In any regard, some people walk out. Some people lose themselves in the course of that relationship, and so they might have come into the relationship as one individual, kind of, or thinking they knew who they were, lost themselves in between, and now they're out trying to figure out who am I.
I understand that so completely well. I came out of college and undergrad being a very successful college student, and I had a lot of accolades, and I was high on life, and I was young, and I felt great. And then I made the decision to get married and ran smack into something that seemed to undermine everything that I thought about myself, where I thought I was smart, it was like, you're dumb. Where I thought I was a leader, it was like, no, you're a failure. But what I realize is you can do some parts of being who you are, but it's not going to be sustainable, right? Because you need the whole part. You need to be on the journey of understanding the whole part. So you're right. You can only it's hard to do when you're in the middle of the mess. You can try your best, but it definitely does require you to know who you are and to go. And it's going to take, as I've learned, it's going to take some transformative experiences for you to learn who you are and how you want to show up in this world.
Yeah, I think so. This has been a really rich and I do believe transformative conversation. Adrian, thank you so much, Dr. Adrian. I guess we'll be calling you in short order. Thank you so much for this conversation and to helping us to understand what men want and what adjustments we need to make as women if we want relationships to work. There's a flip side to this. What men need to know about women. So that's coming. Again,
Absolutely.
that's going to be another interesting conversation. But I like to end the show with the lightning round. So we've talked about all the really intense stuff now. This just like good old down home Bahamian type of stuff. So I just need one word answers. I'm going to throw at you and say something like Goombay punch or lemonade.
Goombay punch.
All right.
All right. That was a practice round, but I got you.
Okay. Right. Coconut tart or pineapple tart?
Coconut.
Conch or shrimp?
Conch.
Like what are you talking about, Miranda?
Weird question.
Is that really a question? Okay, so let's talk about let's say swimming in the ocean or swimming in a pool.
Pool.
Okay, why?
Not as messy. The ocean's so messy and people and
okay,
sand everywhere, and I got to get sand out of places I know sand could go into. And
okay, I got it now. Okay, understood. Okay, so all right, how can somebody get on your good side?
Laugh at my jokes.
Okay. What are your pet peeves? Like, what are the things that really bother you?
Oh, a lot of things annoy me, to be honest with you, because I think I think people do a lot of dumb things that don't make no sense. I can't think of anything in original. So many things annoy me. I can't think of just one.
But let me have some. Like, what annoys you?
Well, I like to sleep like sideways on the bed, not up and down. So it annoys me when I can't. Like, so I don't like sharing a bed. That's like I want to see how
weird.
Right. So, I don't like unenergetic spaces when I'm energetic. Like if I'm feeling energy, hey, what's going on? And y'all are like, let me just go on someplace. Yeah, that bothers me. I like I like energy. I like lively situations and energetic.
Like the same type of energy that you're giving off coming back at you.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And where does Adrian see himself a year from now? Just a year.
Oh man, that's a very good question. Hopefully closer to owning a home. That's one of my goals. I really want to be able to own a home. But I need a home that can, that can house about that has about 6 rooms in it, because I want everybody to have their own room and have an office space and whatnot.
Okay. This is my final question, and this relates to your book. What is the ultimate goal of this book that you've written? Like when somebody gets this book and they start reading it, what do you want to take place within them?
I want them to unplug from the matrix of how they think relationships are supposed to work, because a lot of how we are socialized in how relationships are supposed to work is conflict driven. And I fundamentally believe that it actually sets us up for divorce than it actually does for us to be in a harmonious situation.
Hmm. Okay. That's interesting. Does that have to do anything with the type of counsel that you get before marriage, or the type of relationship that you have in terms of the communication, talking, the understanding, the core values, or is a
Yeah.
combination of all that stuff?
It's a combination of all of that stuff. So, like I said before, I think we have very truncated conversations. And what I'm trying to add to the fray is a holistic, a more well-rounded and balanced conversation. You know, when we say men, you're supposed to respect men and love women, right? We truncate it. Men want to be loved, women want to be respected. And those slight adjustments, I think, do wonders for people to unlock spaces in the other person that we have pretty much boxed out because it's not male or it's not woman or female enough, right?
Hmm.
So that's what I'm looking to do in this book. You know, get people to deconstruct how they understand relationships, see the conflicts that are in it, and piece it back together by removing these constructs or these concepts that actually hold us back.
Awesomeness. Don't forget LRS, love, respect,
Love,
support.
love, respect, and support. Oh
Support.
yeah.
Adrian, thank you so much. This has certainly been a pleasure. Good to finally see you, meet you. And this has
Likewise.
been another edition of Swerve with me, guys. This is the place where we have adult conversations for mature audiences only. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you let somebody know that they need to watch this show, because they can learn some things about relationship and about our understanding, or our attempt at beginning to understand better how to LRS. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Bye bye.